This is Petermann Island, and it's one of my favourite places in Antarctica. Not just because of the spectacular views, but because it's steeped in the history of one of my favourite explorers, Jean-Baptiste Charcot. Now, Charcot didn't actually find this island. It was first sighted by a German whaling expedition in the 1870s, and it was named for August Petermann, a German cartographer, a kind of armchair explorer, who made maps of all of the various places of the world that other expeditions had been to. But it's some time later before this island is properly charted, and that's done by Charcot on his second expedition to Antarctica. Born into quite a wealthy family, Charcot's initial career was in medicine and neurology, following in the footsteps of his father. But when his parents passed away in the 1890s, he inherited a small fortune, and gradually he drifted further away from medicine and started pursuing his favourite hobby, which was sailing. And in 1903, he made his first expedition to Antarctica on the ship Français. That was one of the pioneering voyages, charting much of the peninsula that had as yet been unexplored, and he seemed to enjoy himself so much that 2 years after he returned to France in 1906, he set sail again in 1908 in a brand new expedition ship, the Pourquoi Pas, or Why Not. Again, Charcot charted much of this area, identifying places that we visit regularly now, places like Marguerite Bay to the south, and he found himself at Petermann Island, and as he explored it, named many of the points and headlands after members of his crew. And on the 1st of January 1909, Charcot brought Pourquoi Pas into this small bay behind me. Now, the 1st of January is actually traditionally a Christian festival, the Feast of Circumcision. Now that sounds a little bit dodgy, but it's actually an observation of the circumcision of Jesus Christ. But because of that date, after Charcot brought his ship into this small little inlet, he named it Circumcision Bay. And the Pourquoi Pas was parked in this bay over the Antarctic winter. They threw a chain across the entrance harbour to try and prevent icebergs from coming in, and they set up camp here on this ice next to the bay. And for the next couple of months explored this area and the island extensively. There is a legacy of Pourquoi Pas' visit to Petermann Island. Engraved in the stones in the bay are the two initials PP just above a little tide line to indicate the highest point of the tide. The hut is not associated with Charcot. It dates to the 1950s, when Argentina was building large numbers of research bases along the Antarctic Peninsula, and these refuge huts were interconnecting them so that sledding parties could call in when they were making a journey from one base to the other. 3 people who used this hut in August 1982 were Ambrose Morgan, John Cole, and Kevin Ockleton. They were members of the Falkland Island Dependency Survey. They were sledding from Faraday Station to the south, which is now the Ukrainian station Vernadsky, and heading north. They called into this hut on the 13th of August 1982 and radioed their base to report that all was well and that they would make contact again in 2 days' time. But tragically, they were never heard from again. The memorial cross just outside the hut is to commemorate their loss. Charcot returned to France in 1911. It was his last visit to Antarctica. During the First World War, he's commissioned into the French Navy, but he spends quite a bit of time in command of a Royal Navy warship, and as a result of his actions, he's awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. All of his subsequent work is carried out in the Northern Hemisphere. Sailing primarily on Panola, he carries out research work in the Atlantic, the English Channel, and around Iceland, and he extensively explores the east coast of Greenland. There are many islands on the Antarctic Peninsula that he discovered and named after people in his crew or relatives of them, places like Jenny Island, named after the wife of one of his officers, and Marguerite Bay, named after his own wife. Many places bear his name as well, places like Port Charcot and Charcot Land. And in fact, although he named them, he wasn't naming them after himself, he was naming them after his parents. There's also an island called Pourquoi Island down in Marguerite Bay, which was first charted by the British Graham Land expedition in 1936. And John Rymel, the expedition leader, decided to name it after Pourquoi in honour of this ship that had done so much to chart that area. Tragically, in September 1936, whilst John Rymel and the British Graham Land expedition are still exploring Marguerite Bay and Pourquoi Island, Jean-Baptiste Charcot sails his ship from the east coast of Greenland to Reykjavik. The next day, he starts sailing for France, but a storm blows up from the Atlantic and Pourquoi is wrecked on a rocky reef and lost with only one survivor, and it was not Charcot. Charcot remains my favourite explorer to come down to Antarctica. Whilst other people like Scott and Shackleton are more known for their attempts to reach the South Pole, Charcot was quietly exploring this coastline, mapping it, and we owe much of what we know today to his early exploration of this area.